It's difficult to explain because technically I am a white British female drinking Dutch tea in a Dutch room as a foreigner, but you can't see that unless I open my mouth, and nobody actually knows, and I actually can speak enough and understand enough Dutch to sort of get by, and if I don't open my mouth, people don't know that I'm any racially different than anybody else around, and it doesn't really affect my life. Internally it affects my life, and this is double consciousness explained, because I know that I'm a different version of myself than people assume me to be, or project their own perception of me onto me and have their own consciousness, and I have my own consciousness. And I'm aware of both these things, so in that way I have double consciousness involved in my life, because I'm acutely aware sometimes that I am not perceived in the same way that I perceive myself for being British in the Netherlands. So now there's some examples. Example number one. I'm sitting here drinking a cup of tea. I woke up about an hour ago. I got off a plane from England last night and arrived back in Holland, and I'm now drinking Dutch tea in a Dutch room with a Dutch boy. And he knows that I'm British. He was with me on the plane. He knows where I came from. But if he didn't know that, his perception of me would be different, because he would assume probably that I'm Dutch. The reason I'm doing my hair right now is because I'm trying to make the video as close to genuine as possible, as close to spontaneous as possible, and not edit it too much or film it too much or plan it or script it too much, because this is a whole other side to double consciousness, where you have this example number two, you've got your public side and your private side. And for me, it's not extremely different, because I'm a pretty open person and I haven't got a lot of things that I don't mind showing to everybody else. But there's also definitely, for most people in the world, a public side of you and a private side of you. And I think that there is definitely a difference between the two, and this is then a version of double consciousness that everyone can relate to and everyone can has experienced in their lives, which is that you've got this private version of yourself which you show to maybe a few select people or only yourself throughout your life, and then you've got the public version, which is the more made up, dry hair, pretty version of yourself, and the edited version of yourself which you've chosen to show to the world. And there's a lot of different motivations within other people of what they want to show to other people. And there are parts of you don't show to the world for fear of, people alienating yourself and people alienating you and rejecting you in whatever way, romantically or in a friendship or even in a business context. There's definitely a kind of side of you that's more professional, and most people project something quite different to their boyfriend and their boss, or their children and their adult friends. And there's various different, it's quite a complex thing, but there's various different elements of double consciousness within public and private context. Basically, I just feel like there's things like this, I don't really feel that it's necessary to show a classroom full of relative strangers apart from Henry and Sonia. Hi. And it's difficult because it's not that I'm embarrassed to see you, to let you see me putting my socks on or doing other private things, but I also deliberately didn't film myself in the shower this morning, because that is private, and that's me consciously removing myself from that level with you. And there's only, there's not so many people I'd feel comfortable showing that side of myself to. And that is a conscious decision. It's not, it's not a subconscious. I've deliberately said to myself, I'm not going to show my butt in the video, because it's this part of myself that's only for myself. And this is also double consciousness. You have the part of yourself which is private and the part of yourself which you project out in various forms. You project yourself professionally to business people and teach whatever else. You project yourself in a romantic way sometimes. If you're wanting someone to find you romantically desirable, you're projecting yourself as your most attractive form. And then you project yourself differently to children, to adults. You project yourself differently to family. Like my grandmother, I would speak to completely differently than I speak to my mum. And this is a conscious divide within myself. It's not, I mean, I've watched videos where they've described it as some kind of conflict within yourself or a war within yourself, but I don't feel that way. It's much less aggressive than that. It's literally just that I have decided to show myself in the most desirable, in whatever way, light to people around me, in the hope that that particular person will like me, or at least not dislike me enough that it will cause problems to my life. And there is probably science behind it, but that's what it comes down to, that you just want people to get along with you so that your life goes along smoother. And in this way you have your private self that you are uncensored, and then you have your public self which you're very much censored even if you're not really trying. I'm just much more polite to my grandma than my mum. I'm now leaving. So there's a third element to double consciousness, in my opinion, which also affects a lot of us, which is that you have your perception of yourself and your real self. And what you do on a day-to-day basis, you're thinking on two different levels. What am I doing within your own head? And you're also thinking, what are people thinking of me? What are people looking at me like? And in that way, you're also sort of doubly conscious. You're thinking like, okay, well, if I walk down the street right now and I've run into another person, I'm judging them, they're judging me on a very basic, quick level. And if I smile at them, what will happen? And you're thinking on that level. You're very aware of yourself in a public context, and yourself as it appears to the outside world. And that is kind of similar to public and private, but actually it's on a different level. It's on a very inside, unconscious level that you make snap judgments without necessarily even thinking about it, based on other people's perception of you. And that's kind of the next level of private and public, in my opinion. It's kind of things that you are just ingrained in you because you live in a Western society where you're expected to behave a particular way. And, you know, I'm not walking down the street naked right now because it's inappropriate. And I know that, but I didn't think to myself this morning I'd better put clothes on because Western construct society demands it of me. It just kind of happened because it's ingrained in me to do so, and it's a bit cold. And I just think that that level can't be removed unless you're brought up by wolves. There's a certain element of societal pressure on you to behave yourself when you're around other people. And I don't think about that on a day-to-day basis, but I definitely act on it, so that must be a completely different level. But I'll leave that to philosophers to come up with more complicated versions of. I'm going to have to go now because I'm going to miss the tram, and I'm supposed to be somewhere 15 minutes ago.